Hey everyone, back again with another voiceover. It's going to be a little less explanatory than the last one, seeing as how I did this image a while ago, and I don't remember too much about the process, so there's really not much to talk about. I'll do my best, because I really enjoy doing these voiceovers, even if it is somewhat difficult to get used to talking to myself. I also have the window open, so in addition to hearing my CPU fan, you may hear neighbors playing outside, or birds, or an occasional gust of wind, cars going by, that kind of stuff. But it's very hot in my room and I don't have a fan. So, despite Shade, this is the character's name is Shade, looking like a cross between maybe a Rottweiler and Doberman Pinscher and some kind of Bernese mountain dog, in her reference, I decided to go with a more Doberman-esque physique because a previous image I had seen of her had what reminded me of a Doberman kind of face. I mean, it was a bit different, less narrow, less blocky cheeks, but it still had very strong Doberman vibes. So what you're seeing right now is not my line work. This is a refined sketch because I had wanted to get everything in order, anatomically wise, with my initial sketch. Now, the initial sketch I probably could have done rather refined, except for the face. Everything else is a profile, but the face is at an angle, which was my challenge for this piece, because something that is turned slightly and contorted is much more difficult to draw, at least for me, than muscles and anatomy that is simply elongated, which is the rest of her body. Even the paws, I remember, were not as difficult as they have been in previous times, probably because I only had one other big challenge to focus on. You see me here trying out a background and giving up on it and deciding to go with a different background that also gets moved around and scrapped later. And then we go back in with some fine line work. You've seen me before spend a lot of time picking out a line art tool. Not as much time this time. I just went with what I'm used to, which is using this pen on I think like 5. So here we go with that typical getting my base layer down and clipping it. This time I did use that selection tool because most of my line work was solid. I typically will not use it if I want to leave the line work with kind of gaps in it, maybe wispy at the ends. I don't like going back and connecting it all. I think it has a much more artistic or natural feel, I guess, is the best way to explain it, if I do leave things somewhat open. Not completely, I haven't mastered that one yet. blocking in those markings. I really like when the tips of tails have these different colors, but it's always difficult for me to figure out how that marking would lie with the fur. It just never looks quite right to me. Now into the face, something a little different. You'll usually see me just go in and block it out immediately, but I did a little bit of an outline first because I remember I was kind of confused about how it all fit on the face. So I just took a little extra time with that. Now with the mouth I had to do a little guesswork on what the tongue would look like. I decided to give gray skin because the paw pads are black, which means that the tongue and the gums would also be gray. I believe on the other image of her mouth was pink, but I can't quite remember. I typically tend to go with whatever color the paw pads are, the skin and the mouth and the fleshy parts are going to be some variation of that. When it comes to shading, there's a technique I've been wanting to flesh out for a while. I always either do it on a very light character or a very dark character. And when I do it on a very dark character, a lot of the shading detail gets lost. When I do it on a very light character, typically ones that are cream or white colored, the actual design of the character is lost in favor of the color of the shading. I can never remember to do it on an intermediately colored character. But so what it is something that I've been attempting to replicate from watching Remarin's videos and seeing her art. She's an amazing artist. She's one of my biggest inspirations right now. It's kind of where I want to be, that level of intuitive design and anatomy. But you lay down a base color and you render out all the details in various shadows over it. So here I am doing a lot of fur detail, and I'll go back in later with a lighter orange color to kind of denote a gradient of light almost, where things are more shadowed and less shadowed, so less light on them and more light on them. And I can never quite understand how she does it, because she'll do all of this and she'll put it on some kind of layer type, I believe it's multiply, but it won't be completely dark, which is what I get, because obviously if you put a darker color just over your image, you're going to get all of it in shadow. So what I end up doing is I go over with a lighter orange, an orange that's lighter than that base shading color I did, to try and lighten up certain areas to make it look less like it's dark. Now, maybe what she does is she uses a light color initially and goes back over it. I just can't seem to understand the process behind it, so I'm just trying to figure it out. Eventually I'll get it, but for right now this is one of my attempts, and I think it came out decently. For the lighting layer, I just went over with green. And I thought green would be a great idea because I like green, and I like orange, and I like how they go together. Looking back, if I had left this on any other layer type, it would have looked weird. But with what I did with the layer type and the opacity of the layer, it worked out. Background, I did duplicated a gradient layer and messed around with layer settings to get a darker overall feel for it without just using straight up black. Here I was saying that I didn't have much to say about it, but apparently I do. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and you took something out of that. See y'all in the next one.